It's time for Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen. And yes, you're hearing this right. This is not Bryan Nolen. I am Trey Lyle. As we record this on March 5th during the evening, obviously Bringing the Heat comes out on Thursday afternoon. Today is Bryan's birthday. So filling in for Bryan is me, so he can celebrate his birthday. If you want to wish him a happy birthday, on Twitter, at the Bryan Nolen. If you want to check out a great picture of Bryan Nolen, at Trey Lyle VT. See my birthday shout out to Bryan Nolen. So if you're listening to this, head to Twitter, at the Bryan Nolen. Wish him a happy birthday. So he is celebrating that tonight, hence why he's not here. But I guess Bryan picked the right day, or maybe the wrong day, to not do the show because of his birthday. NASCAR decided to celebrate his birthday by dumping a bunch of news onto us. We got more about the lawsuit. We got suspensions. We got an appeal held, reversed, essentially. So later on this show, we'll have the boss man, the boss of FrontStretch.com, Tom Bowles, join us. But first, we got to get someone into the Inferno. And this is where Bryan Nolen comes in this past weekend. He was at COTA covering a fantastic race. More reaction to that you could have heard on the Happy Hour podcast on the FrontStretch Podcast Network if you're listening to wherever you get your podcast, or if you're watching this live on YouTube, just hit the live tab and you can go back and watch it if you haven't seen it already. Myself, Peter Strata, Dalton Hopkins, Michael Massey went deep into the race at COTA. So check that out as well. Great race. So this past weekend at COTA, he interviewed the driver of the number 41 for the Haas Factory team and former Xfinity Series champion Cole Custer, talking about his transition from back to Cup from Xfinity and everything that goes along with that, also being a first-time dad. So, let's go. Time to bring Cole Custer into the Inferno.
Now it's time for...
Comes Sheldon Creed, white flag one more time around. Custer's pulled out to the advantage. He needs a perfect 1 and 2. Allgaier higher, trying to keep the momentum up. Allgaier, he's getting a little pressure per second. Custer pulling away. Custer proving he deserves to be a part of NASCAR's elite. Today, Cole Custer is an Xfinity Series champion.
To go into the Inferno with Bryan.
Right now, folks, at this time, I'm going to bring the program driver the number 41 car in the NASCAR Cup Series, Cole Custer, joins the program. First off, how does that sound, knowing that you're back? Second time with the Cup Series, but first season with, quote-unquote, Haas Factory team. Just what is this like for you?
It's awesome. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just trying to make the most of it. You know, a lot of people don't get second chances at this deal, so I'm trying to give everything we got to try and, move ourselves in the right direction and be where we need to be.
Is there more pressure for you, knowing that this is your second chance at it? Obviously, you went down the Xfinity Series, won a title and everything, but you feel more pressure with this?
I don't know about more pressure, but definitely you know what you're looking for. Like you're trying to make yourself better every day, and you're trying to make everything how you think it should be.
Obviously, the transition wasn't easy. I mean, just what was that transition like ever since the green or the checkered flag waved at Phoenix in November, all the way up to the clash at Bowman Gray? What's the transition been like, and then how like personally for you, how has it been?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot. I mean, over the offseason, these guys worked extremely hard organizing everything, just because it was just so much stuff to organize. You don't have as many people, so it's just trying to get everything exactly how we wanted it, and then getting ready for this year. So there are a lot of things that you wish you were just fluffing and buffing on cars over the off season, where you had to kind of organize a lot of stuff. But I feel like we're in a good spot right now. We just have to keep working on it.
Okay, I gotta ask. This is not a PR question, but I'm a big ice cream fan, not a Custer fan. So give me. I need a little bit of a boost. Why should I transition over to custard?
Well, custard, it's smoother. It's not as cold as ice cream, so it's not going to give you a brain freeze. So that's a big key. But anything in Andy's Frozen Custard, you're going to get. It's going to be satisfying.
Favorite flavor?
I like getting the jackhammers. They put the fudge in the middle of them. It's pretty good.
Okay, I like it. Another thing that you enjoyed was you became a dad in July. What has that been like, and how has that transition been?
It's been great. I mean, my wife has done great. My wife Carrie, and it's just been definitely a new sense of purpose, and you just know what your job is every day, and it's nonstop for sure. I mean, you're always doing something, but it's been awesome.
If he comes to you down the road and says he wants to be a race car driver, will you encourage it? Or are you going to try and go to the golf route? Like, where do you want him to be?
At the end of the day, he's going to have to want to do it. I think that's the biggest thing. So, we'll tackle that problem when we get there, but you can't force it on anybody.
Once again, Cole Custer joins the program here. Cole, obviously, I feel like this is the longest season of any major sporting event. I mean, you're going from February to November with one off break. How do you not get burnt out? How do you try and reset midway through July, midway through August?
I think the biggest thing is just during the week, finding those times to kind of relax and get away from it for a second, which is tough because you kind of have to be thinking about it 24/7. But you have to just find those little times during the day where you can try and keep your mind sane a little bit.
Now, I mean, is there certain things you do when you're not at the racetrack? Like, what if someone was to ask, what does Cole Custer do for fun besides racing? What do you say?
I'll go golf from time to time. It's probably the biggest thing.
What's your handicap?
15 maybe, I would say. I can do decent. Like, I can hold my own, but I'm not some pro golfer or anything. So, but yeah, I think sometimes you might go golf from time to time.
I gotcha. With this new team, how much of it is new? How much of it have you known them? Just what's the overall aspect of this new group?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of new people, with the Alliance, with RFK, definitely a lot of different moving parts. But, yeah, I feel like we have a really good group. I mean, all these guys have worked extremely hard, and I think we have a group that can progressively get better throughout the year.
A couple more things here before I let you go. Obviously, you were up there in contention at Daytona. It didn't go your way. Is that one that you feel like should have, that you let get away, or is that just super speedway racing in general?
I mean, it is just super speedway racing in general, but I would be lying to you if I didn't say, like, man, I'm gonna look back at that the rest of my life and could have had one there. But it's how super speedway racing goes. I mean, you see him wreck on pretty much the last lap every single time. For me, the only thing I would have changed is maybe wait to the front stretch to make the move. But at the end of the day, I had such a big run, and the 35 had spun, so you didn't know when the caution was going to come out, and I went for it. So learn it for the next time, but yeah, I feel like it was good for our team to have a shot to win one of our first races.
Denny is critical of that move. Have you talked to him since then?
I haven't. Right after the race, we talked a little bit at the car, and it was pretty calm. Like, after the race, I was like, man, I wish I waited for the front stretch, and that's all I regret, really.
Last but not least for you, Cole, the expectation. Is it to gather data to get ready for the upcoming years, top 10s, top 5s, maybe sneak a win in? What is the expectation for this team and then for you personally?
Well, I think at the end of the day, we want to make the playoffs. So we have to work towards that and try and live in the top 20, get good stage points, and try and win a race, So I feel like we just have to keep working in that direction.
Thanks so much to Bryan and Cole, and especially to Cole Custer for that interview. It was a great conversation that Bryan had with Cole Custer at COTA this past weekend. Now let's get to What's Still Hot.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
Joining me now is because I guess NASCAR decided to dump as much news as humanly possible today. NASCAR Bowles on Twitter, Tom Bowles, the CEO, boss man of frontstretch.com. Bryan gets lucky once again. He gets bailed out on not having to do his own podcast on one of the biggest news days so far of the season. So hope you're doing well, Tom. Let's dive right into this. NASCAR is countersuing 2311 and FRM. It was the news that dropped early this morning in a 30-page claim, basically claiming they willfully violated antitrust laws by orchestrating anti-competitive collective content. There are other notes about how the charter system essentially is not good for NASCAR, that they don't believe in the charter system, that it's them acting in good faith to the teams. Your reaction to when the lawsuit came out in terms of the countersuit from NASCAR, because it was kind of shocking.
Yeah, I mean, look, NASCAR is trying everything that it can do to make sure that it doesn't reach discovery in the other case, to make sure that they are able to prevail in this argument. with 2311 in front row, because if they lose, the whole charter system gets ripped up and their finances get pushed out in the open potentially over the course of the case. And the way in which they do business with the teams will change forever. So while the actual countersuit to me was a little surprising, right? Like they're pushing this, to me, the same narrative that they've always pushed, that yeah, the words in the suit may be a little bit different, but the bottom line is they think that front row 2311 collaborated at the last minute against a charter deal that they'd already agreed to sign. And it's sour grapes from a negotiation that they felt like they were a part of all the way up until the last minute, where NASCAR said, look, we're not negotiating anymore. And then they turned around and said that the negotiations to this point were not in good faith. And so what NASCAR is saying is, hey, look, since then you've been showering insults and you've been showering all this stuff at us that indicates that we're not trying to produce a collaborative environment. And, they were saying that they violated the Sherman Act by, which is not something that I thought I'd be talking about ever when it comes to NASCAR, and something about violating interstate commerce. It was very, very difficult to follow. Do you agree? It got really, really in the weeds. But bottom line, I think the narrative is still the same in that these two teams, NASCAR feels, collaborated against them to try and take NASCAR out. And their vision was always to fight NASCAR at the last second with the charter agreement. And by doing so, they were basically pulling something that they had agreed to previously, right? Like NASCAR felt like all 15 teams were on board. And for them to make this change at the last minute, has upended things. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah, part of it was like they are actively like not promoting the sport. And, JGR quickly comes out with an announcement that Denny's going to be appearing in the NASCAR Experience stage on Saturday this weekend at Phoenix. And he quote tweets it by saying, come see me actively promoting and growing our sport this Saturday. Their lawyer, Jeffrey Kessler, comes out, of course, for 2311 and FRM, saying basically they're now attacking them. They're confident in their lawsuit. And so, I mean, this is going to get ugly before it gets good. I feel like we always have said that, and it's going to keep going that way.
Can I say something? It's just like I was grasping for words before. It feels like NASCAR is grasping at straws. And this is another way in which they can potentially slow down the discovery in the case and try and punch back, but they're punching back with the same arguments. As much as they're in the weeds with things like mentioning the Sherman Act and some of the very specific legal language that they got into in this counterclaim, to me, it's the same argument that they've always had. And, it's an argument that's really easy for 2311 and Front Row Motorsports to dispute. The charter was pushed to them within a very tight window of you sign it or guess what? You don't get a charter. We as NASCAR are done negotiating. And 2311 and Front Row didn't feel like that was fair. And they didn't feel like that was, two sides operating in equal faith to come toward an agreement. And that's what's gotten us here in the first place. And I think in the process, 2311 and Front Row have become more emboldened, especially when the judge they granted the injunction where we are sitting here, fourth race of the year this weekend, and these guys still have charters. They didn't lose anything by filing the lawsuit. So in a way, they've already won because they're not losing money while continuing to fight this.
A fight that was actually won against NASCAR was by Joe Gibbs Racing, as it was announced today that they won the appeal with Chase Briscoe. Basically, he was docked 100 points. He gets his points back, and they essentially won their appeal, stating that the process of attaching the specific spoiler base to the rear deck and not modifications of a single source part, essentially, basically what they did wrong was not their fault, so they can't be deducted. So we made jokes the last 2 weeks that we had more points than Chase Briscoe. Well, now we don't have more points than Chase Briscoe. And Tom, what was your reaction on kind of when it comes? It seems anytime there's a major modification to a next gen part, the appeal is had more success than I thought it would.
Well, what I was thinking? I just was reading a quote from Jeff Gluck before coming on, where he was talking about, I just want to know what the rules are. And that NASCAR feels like every situation is its own individual situation and deserves to be judged like that. just like the Cindric situation that I know we're going to get to in a little bit. But it creates this environment where it just feels like they're inconsistent, even if they might not be. Like, because my first reaction to this penalty getting overturned is, well, what's the difference between the Chase Briscoe penalty getting overturned and Parker Kligerman not getting a win at Daytona in the Truck Series? Obviously, the situations are different, right? Obviously, the post-race inspection situation with Parker is different, but it feels very strange, right? Like, okay, this one penalty is like this, and it doesn't get overturned on appeal, but we don't really fully understand what the penalty is, even after the appeals panel explains it to you. And I think for the casual fan, or for a lot of fans, honestly, they just don't even understand the violations to begin with or the process. And I think that's where NASCAR gets itself into a lot of trouble. Now, this is great for Briscoe and Joe Gibbs Racing because they've just been off to such a ugly start. I don't know if you knew this, but if the season ended today, sure, Christopher Bell would be in the playoffs, but guess who wouldn't be? Denny Hamlin, Ty Gibbs, and until this appeal, Briscoe. It's only one of the 4 cars where 23XI has gotten off to a strong start with Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace. It was feeling like a changing of the guard outside of Bell, especially with, the ongoing saga of Hamlin and the lawsuit and how much longer he's going to race. So I think like it's a good thing for Toyota, a good thing for JGR, but it just really reflects on the inconsistency that NASCAR sometimes has. And sometimes it's not even their fault because it's an appeals panel that overturned this. It wasn't like NASCAR turned around and said, my bad, but it still creates this aura that, you have to shake a magic 8 ball to see what you're going to get every time there's a penalty assessed.
It also shows, you want to compare it to Henderson Motorsports, this one, small truck team in that if you have the money like JGR, you're more likely to win an appeal. Like the Hendricks of the world wins the appeals, whereas these smaller teams maybe don't win their appeal. Something of note, you talk about Denny Hamlin, this will lead to the transition. He was in the playoffs at one point today for about a few hours. And that's because you speak of consistency. Well, something I would say inconsistent happened today, and it was the penalty from Austin Cindric. And if you watched Happy Hour on the YouTube stream or hear us talk about it, he essentially right-reared Ty Dillon at Coda, but it was announced that he was not going to get suspended. He was fined 50,000 points and docked 50 championship points after the incident. Essentially, NASCAR said, while he did have intent behind it, the speeds were not fast enough that they thought warrant a suspension. Your overall reaction to that?
Again, inconsistency, right? What are the rules? Why do the rules apply differently in each case? And to me, that's the biggest problem. When you are playing an NFL game and an offensive lineman holds somebody, it doesn't matter whether he grabs a shirt to the point where he takes the shirt off, he's holding him so bad, or whether it's just a little touch and go. A hold is a hold with the same penalty and the same instant reaction. You have to go back 10 yards and repeat the down, right? And that's really easy for everybody to understand. People may argue the penalty in the moment, but they're able to move on because they're not arguing the scope. And that is the problem. It's almost like NASCAR in some ways has gotten too in the weeds under the guise of making sure that they are always right and they are always following the black and white. Instead, they've just created all these shades of gray. Well, this case is different from the other case, and we want to make sure that there are levels here. Well, no, you gotta stick with something, right? It's just like with the caution flag situation in Atlanta, where they felt like on a Saturday the way that they threw the caution flag was not right, and then all of a sudden Sunday they're throwing it differently, and it's like they're changing on a dime what they want to do, and you end up with people not knowing what the actual line is and what's going to happen at any given moment. I think that's really bad for the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just, we talked about it yesterday. Is NASCAR going to stay consistent? And they clearly didn't as well. Just to reset the points, I guess, Briscoe now jumps into 15th with 72 points. And I think, you add the 50-point deduction and Austin Cindric being a guy, and we can talk about this as the season progresses. He easily could have won the first 2 races of the season. You could argue he had the best car the first 2 races of the season. And now he sits 35th in points and is in a even deeper hole. Well, Tom, you wrote about this guy for frontstretch.com. He had maybe his best performance in quite some time on Sunday. Unfortunately, did not get the win. Kyle Busch now becomes the focus for the soundbite of the week.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm gonna bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And it's your track race.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
Yeah, maybe. Certainly didn't help. You know, I was out front, had a gap, was just trying to preserve my tires and work my car the best I could to run clean lines, take care of my tires, and go as fast as I could without slipping the tires. And then when you get a yellow and you get everybody bunched up, then it's complete defensive mode and you're just all over the place and not hitting corners correctly, not being able to arc your turns and save your tires, and you're pushing through the fronts and getting pushed through the fronts. And then, you know, just having 2 lap less fresher tires as the 20 did, I feel like that maybe was a bit of the game changer. Everything's so equal, you know, I'd love to have that back and see if the 2 laps difference was the moneymaker there. But I can't say enough about all the guys. I mean, the Rebel Bourbon Chevrolet was fast and had a great shot to be able to win the race. And just want to thank Zone and Chutters and Lucas Oil and everybody for our program that helps us out, RCR, ECR, everybody at Welcome, North Carolina. They're gritty, and they've got that grit, they've got that fire, and they're not going to outwork us. So everybody there did a great job.
So, Tom, based off what you noticed with Kyle Busch's performance on Sunday, do you think he wasted his best chance at a win, or is he quote unquote back?
So I definitely think he's more back than not back, but I do think we need to pump the brakes because people might forget, and I wrote about this, at this time last year after 3 races, he was 6th in points. He led a significant amount of laps in all 3 races, about the same amount of laps. And he also had a near miss, right? Came to the line 3 abreast with Ryan Blaney and Suarez and just missed Atlanta. And it looked like he was going to be a title contender after winning 3 races the year before. Turns out he didn't get another top 5 finish until May. And as we know, last year ended up being the worst year of Kyle Busch's Cup career. So I think we've got to walk before we run here, but there are a couple of things that give me hope. One of them is that Busch never showed this type of speed on a road course last year, where driver skill still factors in to how you finish. It's not just the setup. You can really, especially late in these green flag runs, you know, utilize your experience and your skill to maybe take a mid-level car over the finish line and, you know, get it, you know, to a point where it's ahead of some people you wouldn't be ahead of. You say at an intermediate track race, like look at what SVG and how it did and how SVG performed at COTA. And Busch has 4 more opportunities like that before the end of the regular season. And then you look at how RCR is at drafting tracks. They've already won the first, you know, 2 drafting track races, you know, over in the Xfinity series, right? You know, Austin Hill and Jesse Love. So, you know, they're going to be strong. You go to Talladega, you know, that's a track that wasn't always in Kyle Busch's wheelhouse, but I think he'll be one of the favorites there. And, you know, there's a couple more opportunities to pull a win off there. And, you know, we haven't seen how they are at intermediate tracks yet, but certainly the momentum is going to help him as they go to the other types of tracks on the circuit. I think Kyle's in a really good spot. And, oh, by the way, needs to be in a good spot, turning 40 this year and, you know, as a pending free agent. So it's a big year for him. He's off to a decent start. I don't think he missed an opportunity or missed his last opportunity for a win, I should say. Certainly was a good opportunity, but you put yourself in position enough times, the win is going to come.
Yeah, I think it says Kyle Busch is still Kyle Busch in terms of the driver talent. It's just, will he have the car consistently to finish up front? And that might dictate where he goes next. So that's kind of where I sat at this one. So let's wrap up the podcast here with the checkered flag.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Anything you want to rant, rave, or review about the checkered flag is out, Tom? What are your thoughts?
So I was thinking about this last couple days, and then certainly at the last minute when you had me pop in here. Happy birthday, by the way, Bryan Nolen. One of the reasons he's not on the podcast this week. Hopefully he's drinking a nice glass of wine right now and laughing at us.
No, he drinks milk. He's a responsible adult.
That's true. He's a responsible adult. He would never touch a drop of alcohol. But, you know, as I mentioned on Twitter, and as you'll see more of throughout the season, I have been lucky enough to start working with the IndyCar and Fox team, and I'm going to be doing IndyCar throughout the season. And so I was processing my first weekend at St. Pete and thinking about some of the differences that I encountered when I was doing IndyCar versus NASCAR and some of my initial thoughts. And one of the big things that I noticed at St. Petersburg and just throughout IndyCar as a whole is just accessibility, right? It's a very accessible series where the drivers, the fans, you want to go and see somebody. I remember I was on a break on Saturday. I wasn't even planning to be in the garage for something. And I was walking by and I saw a huge autograph session, all the drivers interacting with fans, and some really famous drivers on the open wheel side, and you could just go right up and just have a conversation with them. And I was just thinking about the last time I was in the NASCAR garage and something like that happened, where it was that open and that relaxed. And I think NASCAR, as it goes through the transition that it's been going through the last couple of years, not just in who's challenging for the championship and the next generation of drivers hitting championship level status, it needs to look at the way that it's accessible. And, just as we were talking earlier about how Denny was pointing out how he's trying to promote the sport, I think we haven't seen NASCAR drivers do enough of that lately. And my hope is that there's a long-term plan in place. I know that NASCAR has some things in place, that we start doing more of that. I think that, the NASCAR got to where it was with the American fan base because people felt like they could reach out and touch the athletes in a way that they couldn't do for baseball players, basketball players, football players. And for some reason, the last 5, 10, 15 years, we've lost that. And I definitely think it needs to change and go in a positive direction. And I saw another race series this weekend that knows how to get that job done. So it's definitely something that can be done. NASCAR just needs to really find a way to work with the drivers and the teams and just make sure that these guys are out there in a way where they're interacting more with fans. It can't just be on Twitter. It needs to be in person and in appearances and in situations where fans feel like they can be more interactive with their favorite athletes.
I guess mine would be on the back of that. Can NASCAR get out of its own way? It feels like they've had a great season. If you just take the on race stuff and put it into a bubble, it's felt mostly really good. Whether it was the nostalgia feel of Bowman Gray, I think a really solid Daytona 500 with a historic finish in terms of Byron going back to back, a really good Atlanta race, and maybe the best road course race in the next gen era that was completely clean. But let's be real. The biggest talking lines of the season so far are still a lawsuit. It's coming back up. Thought that would die down a little bit. And then you have all these officiating inconsistencies, whether it's when to throw a yellow flag, who gets their, who gets what fine or what punishment. So I just think at this point, NASCAR, I have a goal for you at Phoenix. Just let the race happen and hope that all we talk about next week is the racing. And I would feel great about that. I would honestly feel great about it. and that's where I sit. All right. That will do it for this episode of Bringing the Heat with I'm changing the name to Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
Bryan Lyle.
Bryan. I can't. It's hard to combine our names, but at this point, but I'm just kidding. Happy birthday, Bryan Nolen! Reminder at the Bryan Nolen. Go wish him happy birthday. He's enjoying it tonight with his puppies and his lovely wife. So he is. Tom, anything else you want to plug? Check out Did You Notice? Is Kyle Busch back, or is he? Which is your latest article at frontstretch.com. Anything else you want to plug before we get on out of here?
No, I think it's time to get the heck out of here. Hope everybody enjoys Phoenix and hope we have a normal, non-dramatic, really competitive race.
Yes, knock on wood. And as always, if you want the betting preview, you have Wyatt Watson with Through the Gears that comes out on the Front Stretch podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcast, check that out. And then on Sunday, 3:30, right here on the Front Stretch YouTube channel, youtube.com/Front Stretch. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notifications button. We'll have the, 4th edition of the Front Stretch Watch Party for the race at Phoenix. I will be there. Dalton Hopkins will be there. TBD on who else will be there. But we'll have some fun on Sunday, so come interact with us there. It's been fun the first couple weeks of doing that. So for Tom, I'm Trey Lyle, signing off for now on this episode of Bringing the Heat.